What is going on, everybody? It is your boy NTC back for another Overwatch League Season 2 fan thoughts and analysis. Today we will be looking at the roster for the Boston Uprising, third place team in the overall standings for Season 1 during the regular season. Second place in the Atlantic. Very interesting team. They were the only team to have a perfect stage, not including stage playoffs, with a 10-win stage in Stage 3 before falling off quite a bit in Stage 4 and then being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by the Philadelphia Fusion. Boston Uprising, a very interesting team, especially with the moves they made this offseason. They opened up their offseason by cutting 4 players: Snow, Avast, Kalios, and Mistakes. Mistakes, of course, famously their DPS player who came in to fulfill the role of Dream Casper following his whole ordeal and situation. I don't really know what has gone on with Dream Casper, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So we saw those 4 moves: Snow, Avast, Kalios, and Mistakes. I gotta slow down my talking a little bit. And then the next move we saw was Neko, who is one of their support players, leaving, going with the Toronto Defiant. And then a couple days ago, 4 days ago to be exact, we saw Striker, their star DPS player, depart for the San Francisco Shock. This team is in a very, very interesting position now. Only 4 players on this roster for Season 2 that were on the Boston Uprising roster last season. It is a completely new DPS core, but the same tank core, likely, I'd say, starting tank core and support core will most likely be the same. But there are a couple new players. But we're going to start with that DPS core, where we see first Blase, who is going to be an interesting player to watch. He comes from Gladiators Legion, which is an interesting team, because I've seen actually quite a few people come from Gladiators Legion so far that have been signed. I can't remember off the top of my head who else came from Gladiators Legion, but they were definitely some other players. I'd have to double check. But Blase is going to be a very interesting DPS player to watch. I know he's known for his Doomfist play. I haven't personally seen any Blase play. I didn't watch Gladiators Legion at all. I didn't really watch any of Contenders last year. I caught a couple clips here and there, but that was really it. He's gonna have to be that kind of mistakes player. I don't know. He might be the striker role. I don't really know. Boston's DPS situation is pretty rough right now. If I were them, I would look into signing another DPS player. I feel like they need just somebody who, is a little bit more known. Because the other player they have in the DPS role is Color Hex. He comes from the Sydney Drop Bears. He is a New Zealand player. They got first in Contenders Season 2 Australia for 2018. And he got second place while with this with Masterminds GC before going over to Sydney Drop Bears. He's an interesting player. Yes, he's on a team that won Contenders, but Contenders Australia isn't the best scene. It's not like South Korea or North America or Europe, which are the strong scenes, as well as China's a pretty good scene. Those are the scenes that are better. Australia's not a great scene, so I'll be interested to see what we get with Color Hex. I think he's going to be their Widowmaker for the most part. He also can play some Pharah. Both can play some Genji. But I don't know. This DPS duo kind of worries me if I'm a Boston Uprising fan. Especially because I think the Atlantic is going to be somewhat tough and is very DPS heavy. A lot of the really good teams in the Atlantic have very, very, very good DPS play. New York Excelsior, Philadelphia Fusion, London Spitfire, the Paris Eternal. There's some really good DPS play. Saya player as well for the Florida Mayhem. It's going to be hard, I think, for Boston to be that dominant DPS team in the Atlantic. I think with these new players. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up playing really really well, but I just don't. I don't see them performing incredibly well. And I think that's going to be an issue that we see with this team going forward. But let's move on to their flex tank role, where we have Note, and that's it. Just Note. Note was a very good player last season. I think he is one of the highlights really for this team from last season. He is a Canadian player, played for the Canadian World Cup team, so he has some time under his belt in the recent months, and he's a pretty good player. Nothing really bad about him. I've found that he is one of the better divas in Western play. He impressed me a lot in Stage 3 and in some of the time I saw him in Stage 2 and 4. I thought when he was really kind of in his best, but definitely like Stage 3 and Stage 4. And I'm excited to see what he does with this new DPS line. I think the best thing that this team has is the fact that they didn't lose their front line, tanks and their back line supports. You can replace your DPS play. It's a lot harder to replace your tank play, and that's kind of where you really can't have, the change, right? When you're changing a lot of your tanks, that's where your issues come in. And we can look now at their main tank role, where we will most likely be seeing Gamsu most of the season, if not the whole season. He is another player who I thought was pretty good. I don't think he's anything crazy. I don't think he's a player that I look at and just go, he's going to take the league by storm this year. I think he's good. I think he does well as much as they need from him, but I think overall Gamsu is the kind of player who you can rely on. But he's not going to be your fissure. He's not going to be, that huge game changer every single game. And he's not going to be the reason why this team, in my opinion, finds success if they do find success. I think it's going to come down mostly to Note and a little bit of Gamsu. But I think right now the best player on this team is Note. But I do think Gamsu's good. I don't want to make it sound like I don't like Gamsu. But I don't think we will be seeing the kind of tank play that we see from some other South Korean tank players. He's good. He's solid. He's probably a top 10 tank, which doesn't say a lot since there's 20 teams, and there was 12 teams last year. But he is good, and I think he will be a good addition for this team. Next, we have Axiom, another main tank player. He comes from Toronto Esports. May they rest in peace. Just kidding. Anyway, Axiom, very, very interesting player. I think he is a player that will be very, very exciting to watch. Obviously, Toronto Esports is formerly the Boston Uprising Academy team, so there's a connection there. So he's just kind of been bumped up. I don't really know how much we'll see of him. If we're seeing a triple tank meta at the start, maybe we see him a good amount. But I don't know. I doubt it, because I feel like they'd rather have Gamsu playing. But I don't know what the meta will be, and I don't know if we'll see him a lot. But I have no real knowledge of Axiom. I have never seen anything Axiom has done, so all I can say is you can't really go wrong adding another tank player. But Boston didn't add just one, they added two. The other one that they added is Fusions, who is a two-way player between Boston Uprising and Uprising Academy, which is their academy team. So we can look at this Fusion signing. in a really good way. I think he comes from the UK. He played for the UK World Cup team, and I was really impressed by him. We've seen, I think, three players from that World Cup team, the UK one, make it into the Overwatch League. We have Fusions, who used to play for British Hurricane, and then now, obviously, with the Boston Uprising, we have Kib and Cruz, who we'll get to in some later videos. So 3 members from that team. So yeah, I really liked Fusion. He was one of the players who I was most impressed with during the World Cup, and I think he is a great signing. I'm very excited to see him going forward. I would like to see him play some more, obviously. It's not the easiest to assume he's going to play a lot when he is on a 2A contract, so he's going to be probably mostly playing against the contenders teams. I expect him to mostly be on the contenders roster, but there is a chance that we could see him at least a little bit in OWL, and I'm very excited for that prospect. But now we move on to the supports for this team, and we start with Kellex, the Mercy player. Very interesting player. He was, at least at one point in the season, he was the leading Mercy in terms of healing output, which is a good stat to have. So I feel like I'm pretty hard on Kellex, personally. Having the leading healing stat is good and all. I don't know how good Mercy is going to be, and I don't know how good Kellex is with other heroes. I think Lucio's more of a hero he prefers, based on my limited knowledge of him outside of the Overwatch League, but I look at Kellex, and I'm not like in love with Kellex. I never was. I always thought he was kind of a silent Mercy that didn't do a lot. That's not necessarily bad. Some Mercies, you just kind of hope that they have that positioning and they just know what they're doing, but with as much healing as he did, I feel like a lot of that comes down to one of two things. It comes down to playstyle, obviously, for your team. If you're a team that's doing a lot of dive-heavy compositions, or you're just running in a lot, you're taking a lot of damage, you're doing a lot of team fights, you're going to have a lot more healing, average or total. I don't know if it was average, though, or total. I think it was average healing per match, because that's usually the way the stats were, so I'm not crazy about Kellex. I think he's a fine player. I think he does what he needs to. He's consistent, and he's still with this team, which says a lot, and that's good for this team. This team has a lot of turnover. Obviously, only 4 players returning, and I've already talked about 3 of them now with Kellex. But I think he will be a fun player to watch, adjust to the new roster changes, and also the adjustment to no longer playing with Neko, but instead playing with Aim God. Now, Aim God we did see play a decent amount during Season 1. I think he joined the team during the season. Let me double check. Yeah, he joined in April. So he joined in April of last year. So he's gotten some more time, obviously, with the team now. I feel like as the season progressed, he started playing more than Neko anyway. Or they kind of moved in that direction. They're going to play him more. So we'll be seeing him a lot more than Neko, because Neko's not on the team anymore. So I'm excited to see what Aim God does. I didn't really watch a lot of Aim God. Obviously, I saw a lot more Neko, and I remember Neko more. I don't think Aim God was a particularly dynamic and dominant Zenyatta player, but I think he was pretty good. I think he did some good things, and obviously there's a reason why they signed him. They obviously weren't super happy with Neko, or they just felt that Aim God was a better player, or this diamond in the rough that they had. I don't really know. He was on Metabellum before he signed, which Metabellum has been kind of active in the Overwatch League recently, but that's That's Aim God for you. We're going to talk about one final player, the final player on this team, and that is Alamau. And Alamau is, of course, another support player. He's going to be kind of interesting because his hero pool is kind of a mix of both. He can play really any support hero, but I think Lucio and Mercy will probably be where he plays more, which to me opens up either the possibility of maybe they're not super happy with Kelix, which I don't think is the case. I think what's more likely is they just wanted a good player, and maybe they need someone in case Aim God or Kelix isn't playing well, and they need someone who can kind of fill in either role. I'm interested in seeing what he does with this team, and if he plays all that often. I don't have any real clue. He did play in Contenders South America. He played with Brazil Gaming House, who won both seasons of Contenders 2018. But once again, I don't think South America is the strongest scene. So how much does that matter? But he's had a lot of success in the Overwatch scene in general. He was on Team Brazil, which got third at the LA qualifier. But he's been a part of a lot of successful teams. So very interesting squad here that the Boston Uprising have now. Very new squad. 5 new players, including a 2-way player with fusions. I'll be interested to see. I can't talk. I'm beat from exam week. I'm interested to see where this team lines up, honestly, in terms of like overall play. Are they going to be the dominant team that we saw in Stage 3 of last season, or are they going to be the team that people predicted them to be early in the season? People did not think this team's going to be very good, and I can't imagine losing every DPS player is very, very helpful. They were already pretty low in the DPS department anyway, and now they have 2 new DPS players. I can't imagine they predicted Striker to leave. There's obviously a recent move. How recent? Not super recent, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, sure it was somewhat recent, but I think this team needs to look for some more help in that DPS role, because right now they don't have much, and I think it's going to be problematic. I think this team's going to struggle. I think the Atlantic is in a really weird spot. This is the team that I think is in the worst spot compared to the way they performed last season. And I'll talk more about that in later videos as well. But this will be an interesting team to watch. I think they're going to be carried by their tank play for the most part. Mainly their diva play with Note. But I really don't see this team as the team that goes just dominant DPS victories and whatnot. I really think they are going to rely a lot on their tank play. And if it's a GOATS composition season, they're in much better shape, because if that's where that's where they excel, and you have to understand that. Of course, the meta could favor them if it is a tank heavy meta, and DPS play is not as important. Obviously, right now in professional Overwatch, we've been seeing a lot of GOATs still. There's a lot of people that still think GOATs will be the dominant meta come February. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the case. In fact, by the time, Season 2, Stage 1 rolls around, we're going to be a couple weeks out from a new hero reveal. So the meta will be evolving very, very rapidly this season. So if we get another hero that changes the meta like Brigitte did, I don't expect us to. I think Blizzard's going to be a little hesitant to do that. Then maybe we see this team get a meta that doesn't favor them. But if it is a tank heavy meta, like I believe it'll be, like some other people in the world of the Overwatch League believe it'll be, then I think this team will find more luck. I don't know who on this team would play Zarya, for example. I don't know if Note would play Zarya, and they would have Blase or Color Hex on Diva, or if they'd still have Note on Diva and Blase or Color Hex would play Zarya, or if one of their tanks, if Axiom can play Zarya. I don't really know what their plan is if Goats is the dominant meta, but I'm curious and I'm excited to see what this team does. Their first match of the season is against the New York Excelsior, so it'll kind of be a good way to see how this team performs and the success this team has. Because playing against New York, that's a pretty tough way to start. Obviously, Boston's on a 2-game winning streak against New York in the regular season, I guess, not including stage playoffs, because stage 3 finals was a New York Excelsior victory. But so I guess really it isn't a 2-game winning streak. I didn't say that. Disregard that. That'll be an interesting way to start the season. I'm curious to see how it goes. It's not telling in a lot of ways, especially if they lose. If they lose, it's New York, right? New York's a good team, then maybe it's not that surprising. They go and they play Houston. If they beat Houston, okay, well, maybe then they're fine. If they beat New York, that's also not super telling, but it's a little bit more telling that they're in a better place than I think people predict them to be. Maybe New York's not as good. We don't know yet, obviously, but Boston's got some stuff going that I think they need to work out. But I think this team will be good if the meta stays tank heavy, like it seems it might do. But with that being said, I'm going to end this video off here. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below what you think about the Boston Uprising. If you think they will be a powerhouse team, if you think they're going to be a weak team, a team that doesn't really perform all that well, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. But that's where I'm going to end this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.